Okay. Hi, guys. I'm so glad that you could be with us today. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we want to bring resources to the human resource professionals of the world that we just may not know even exist. So I've put together a very eclectic panel of and with various topics of and areas of expertise. You're going to look at them initially and say, what do these guys have in common? Well, what they have in common is they're all my friends, and they all are doing wonderful things in the world. And we want to make sure that we are able to include them in. And we have one more person who will be joining us here real quick. And we'll see if we can bring her in. But let me go ahead and introduce who we have here today. So first, I'm up is Eric Kershaw. Eric he has a company called, what is it, your company called again? Sorry, I'm doing brain parts today.
It's called Harmony Insights.
Harmony Insights. Yeah. See, I'm flustered from the power outage this morning still. Harmony Insights, but he also is doing something that I am very, very familiar with. And that is he put together a mastermind group for human resource professionals, because so often you feel like you're all alone. And that is called HR Hot Seat. And it just celebrated its 5th birthday. And I was at its celebration the other night, and it was exciting. And we're going to hear more about this in just a few minutes. Just want to do some quick introductions. We have Lori Reichel Howe. Lori Reichel Howe is the owner of Conversations in the Workplace. She has a show on You Define Wellness every single month. We're going to talk about in a few minutes, called Conversations in the Workplace. And it's all about healthy conversations, because everything has to do with wellness. And then we brought in someone it's been a hot topic out there about grief and trauma, and how do you support employees in grief and trauma. And we have the expert on it with Peggy Green, who is the owner of The Grief Specialist. And also joining me on this panel, of course, is my co-host, Jane Sanders, the owner and founder of Purpose Whisperer. So guys, good to have you up there. I'm multitasking here. Thank you for being here. What I would like for each of you to do is, I gave a really brief introduction as to what you have, but if each of you would take a minute or two and talk about your business, and we're gonna follow the same layout that we did here. So Eric, tell us about Harmony Insights and HR Hot Seat.
I'm happy to, and I wanted to show you, it's a beautiful day here in Chicago. I don't know if any of you are in Chicago with me, but the sun is out and the sky is mostly blue, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to spend this time with you today. Harmony Insights is an organization that allows me to help companies and consultants leverage the DISC personality assessment. And as Jane so eloquently articulated earlier, it is different than what she is doing, and I'm really interested or eager to dive into those differences. But DISC helps me help others show up and connect confidently with one another, communicate, lead, manage, sell more effectively than they have perhaps before, by better understanding themselves, other people, and how they can adapt to strengthen those connections. So I'm a self-proclaimed DISC nerd, and will clear my schedule for anybody who wants to talk about DISC. My wife is like, can you just go get some friends? I like this whole DISC thing, but you really needed to talk about it with other people. So that's Harmony Insights. HR Hot Seat then is the organization that I started 5 years ago as an introvert. I was looking for that meaningful connection. I wasn't finding it in a lot of the networking that I was doing. And I learned about this mastermind concept where people would come together and hold each other accountable and build trust and tackle common challenges. And I thought, what a great thing to bring to the HR space here in Chicago. I would love to be in front of 8 to 10 HR professionals on a regular basis to build rapport and have them know me as a DISC facilitator. Long story short, 5 years later, we have thousands of members in 11 different licensed chapters around the country, and we are serving HR broadly defined. And my guess is everybody on this call today would benefit in one way or another from our conversations. They're entirely free. You're never going to pay a dollar for what we do, and you're going to be connected with more value than you would ever expect out of a free event, except for, of course, what you're getting from You Define Wellness. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Um, just a little housekeeping item here. I'm getting messages saying, did I mean to spotlight everyone at one time? So you're all showing on the screen. You are showing on my screen. Unfortunately, Zoom is not allowing me to spotlight the group, only doing a spotlight one at a time. I don't know why that is. It worked fine yesterday. It is not working fine today. That's just the way today is going. We're gonna punt. So if you have it on speaker view, you'll be able to see whoever it is that is speaking at that particular time. I'm going to jump over to Lori Reichel-Howe. Lori.
Well, thank you, Denise. Great to be here. Great to have, I think I have had a program with you for, I think, half a year now.
Yes, yes.
And let's see, September, the topic is how to address gossip in the workplace. So I am looking forward to that. In a nutshell, my elevator pitch is that I am founder of Conversations in the Workplace. And what I do is I equip managers, teams, and business professionals how to have what I call safe conversations. And by that, transformative dialogue that uncovers hidden workplace issues. So those can be common things such as challenging team dynamics, mismanaged expectations, cultural insensitivity, and good old-fashioned bad behavior. So I have found that when individuals can skillfully address issues, talk about them, and get some answers and solutions in moving forward, that there's just a greater innovation, a greater inclusion and collaborations in both teams and organizations.
Awesome.
Great to be here.
We are so glad to have you here. Peggy Green.
Thanks, Denise. And I want to welcome everybody for taking time. I appreciate you coming out and really seeing what we have to offer here. So I am the grief specialist, and where I come from that is that I have experienced grief for 30 years, starting with the loss of a 9-month-old daughter, and then more recently, 2.5 years ago, a 24-year-old son who died by suicide. And as we are in that workplace, grief and loss becomes that elephant in the room, where others, coworkers, don't know how to help, don't know what to say. If they do say, they say the wrong thing, or even employers don't know how to help, and then employees don't know how to help themselves. So when it comes to the grief in the workplace, I can help to create that sensitivity, just like you were talking about, Lori, in helping others to be able to help the other employees and how the employers help them. And then I also work with them on a one-to-one coaching basis in helping them to navigate their grief. I am a grief coach with life experiences. In addition to the child losses, I've experienced other losses, including parents and a sister, friends, family. So the magnitude of my loss is very great, and the experience and having come out of that. So I come with a holistic approach where we address you as an entire person instead of just your brain in which you process your loss. So like to cover the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and helping you to heal and navigate your losses. And also then to be able to have those tools in your toolbox to be able to address the losses that you will further experience, because more than likely the loss that you're experiencing and going through now is not going to be your last one. And so to be able to have those tools and resources to be able to help you to get through your current circumstances and then give them to you so that you have them for the future.
That's awesome. Jane Sanders, we talked a little bit about what you do, but do a formal introduction if you would, please.
Yeah, I won't repeat myself, but I did forget to answer the question about the corporate application, which is appropriate here. And actually, I spoke for the Rocky Mountain chapter of Society of Human Resource Management last week about scientific hand analysis and the company and leadership benefits. Authenticity is becoming more and more recognized as critical for effective leadership. And if you aren't self-aware, how can you possibly be authentic, right? So, going to what Eric said, the knowing yourself is critical to be a good leader and a good role model. And if you know for your team members their innate purpose and strengths and talents, and can therefore assign projects and positions in alignment with that information as best you can, automatically and very quickly increases engagement, morale, productivity, which goes to the bottom line in terms of increased retention. So the company and corporate and leadership benefits are huge. And Eric, so I'm an ID, by the way, and if we take DISC and combine hand analysis with that, holy moly, what a combination.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a power team forming right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joining us also is our last panelist, and that is Lisa May, the owner of Fulla in Bend, Oregon. I think you're in Bend. I don't know where you are, but your background is absolutely gorgeous and love it. And one of the reasons why I wanted Lisa to be here is because of the work she's doing in helping people who, particularly if they've become very accomplished in their careers and all of a sudden they're sitting back going, now what? So Lisa, would you give a formal introduction of who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And my apologies for not being in my office. I had the times wrong. I just came back from vacation. And so I'm just getting back in the swing of things here. So my apologies. But, and Denise, thank you for coordinating this. Just being on for a few minutes here, it's powerful. And the group of people that are assembled, and hopefully many of the listeners can really deeply benefit from the diversity of the offerings here. And so I just commend you for coordinating and organizing all of this. I know it's been a major feat. But Fulla, which means abundance and fulfillment in German, is my business. And this became incredibly important to me back at the height of my corporate career within healthcare. I was with Johnson & Johnson for a long time, and then left for a smaller urology company for my last corporate role. And like you said, Denise, from all external markers, if we looked at success, if we looked at impact through products for patients' lives, et cetera, if we looked at all of the external metrics, they were being met. But I was feeling unfulfilled on the inside. And I found this very perplexing, because how is it possible? I felt ungrateful. How is it possible that I could be successful and do good things in the world and yet feel empty inside? And so this led me to a 10+ year quest till this moment in time. And Fulla offers science-based tools and technologies for executives, for teams, for individuals to help unlock their potential by understanding where their energy may be being drawn from and to, and where they're losing themselves, potentially through loss of alignment. And so that's a quick overview, but excited to be here. Thank you again.
Oh, so glad that you're here. So the chat box, you guys put, if you have questions for a particular speaker, please put them in the chat box. We will ask them on your behalf, or you can unmute yourself when we get to some open Q&A. But if you have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat box and I will ask them. I want to start off by going to Eric. Eric, you did a Facebook Live with me, and it was a very, very short Facebook Live for this, because what came out of your mouth was absolutely golden. And it was like, we don't need to go any further. It was fantastic. And do you remember what the question was that I asked you?
I have absolutely no idea. No,
I actually have absolutely no idea either exactly what the question was, except that it had something to do with supporting HR in this time. And you had something extremely eloquent to say about how they're helping everyone else, what's left for them. Can you elaborate on why this is really important right now to be able to delivering what we're delivering?
I'm happy to. I spend a lot of my time with HR practitioners, broadly defined: talent acquisition, talent management, payroll, change management, the list goes on and on. And we spend a lot of that time talking about how we are serving others. And I have a 16-year corporate HR background myself. So I include myself in that group, even though I fall now into the service provider category, I suppose. And a lot of that time is spent talking about how we are supporting the business leaders and the people coming back to the office and bringing the trauma with them, and how we can shepherd people through change and ensure that they are happy in the work that they do. And that's very vital. That's very vital work and purpose, to use some of Jane's language as well, to show up and say, my purpose here is to shepherd you through change and to help you do your best work. I don't think that there's a higher calling sometimes than that. And yet, very few people are talking about how, as HR professionals, then, am I caring for myself? Or how can I care for HR professionals? And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to be a part of this conversation today, because my perception of this group, this assembled group, as Lisa was talking about earlier, is that we are focused on our own wellness and the wellness of other people. And so now suddenly I'm very interested in understanding and talking through how we can be of service, yes, to the HR professionals who need some looking after themselves, but turn that conversation inward and turn that focus inward as well, and say, when I am most focused on helping other people, how can I make sure that I'm being intentional about ensuring that my own needs are being met, that I'm taking time out of my day, even just for a single deep breath, let alone some of the stuff that we experienced with Seema earlier. How can I connect with somebody who can help me identify my purpose, or make sure the work that I'm doing is done more effectively, efficiently, fulfillingly, however I fill in that blank, so that I'm starting with a full glass, so that as it overflows, then it is something that I'm able to share with other people. And if I'm not starting from that place of strength, I'm not sure I can be of much value to others as I go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good actual lead in for me to ask a question of Lori. And by the way, Jane, any of you guys on the panel, if you have questions of each other, please jump in or comment on something. Feel free to jump in. If we're talking over each other, it's okay. One of us will shut up. It's not a problem.
Okay, given that opening, then just really quickly,
Yeah,
it's really unfortunate how self-care takes such a low priority.
Yeah.
And Eric, I'm almost in tears. I mean, it's so true. And even though, my coaching clients, they don't hire me for that, but it ends up being part of the curriculum because they're not doing it. And doing so makes all the difference in the world. Having fun, bringing joy intentionally into your life, and self-care. Just
Yeah.
gotta do it. Gotta do it.
yeah. Lisa's over there doing an amen, I think, because that's all of what she's about. But there's a place where self-care is not exercised, and that is when we're having conversations at work, whether it be email conversations or one-on-one conversations, and knowing how to do effective communicating with others. That's crucial, and I've definitely learned that in the 6 months that Lori Reichel-Howe and I have been working together. So, Lori, chime in on this.
Yes. Okay. Well, and Eric, Jane, everyone, when we look at the role of HR, I think of them as like the school principal. If any problems escalate, they go to HR. And when relationships break down, when teams break down, when communication breaks down, HR gets the 911 phone call. And so they are right there in the middle. They can either be considered the advocate or the enemy, and sometimes it's either one or the other. And what quite often breakdowns, we could tell people, talk it out. We could tell people, step up and address your issues of concern. Well, telling someone to do something is not helpful when they do not have the skill, a framework, or structure of doing that. And when emotions are high, it's what we do instinctively is become defensive, aggressive. We will, if we feel locked into a corner, then we start to attack, might not be punching each other out, but verbally. And so what I have found is helping not only HR, but giving a framework for HR individuals and organizations for dialoguing and talking about things that are difficult, awkward, challenging, and making them safe. And so recognizing what we do that creates defensiveness and altering that, making it safe to talk about things, because nothing anything hidden is not healed. Anything that's not revealed is not healed. And so how do we talk about it safely and get to a place of being able to actually resolve it? So it's not only, it's giving HR some strategies so that, and that are given to others in conflict, or just to team tune-ups, so that they can improve their effectiveness in working together. HR doesn't need to do anything more, but how can they become more effective? And they can't solve people's problems, and they can't just say, quite often they have asked people, well, have you had a conversation with this individual that you're having concerns with? And they go, I tried, they won't listen, I can't. Well, sometimes the way we are doing things is not working, and that's called burnout. So how do we work more effectively?
Yeah, when we're talking about safe conversations and healthy conversations, safe to talk about things, there's a subject that people just don't know what to talk about, and that's death or grieving and employees coming back to the workplace. Peggy mentioned a little bit of her story. She belongs to a club that none of us want to belong to as parents, and having lost 2 of her children, and Connor was just a couple of years ago. And you went back to your other job, into an office with other people. And I think you experienced firsthand that people didn't want to ask you questions because they didn't know how it would react. So you've developed a business on also how to have safe conversations through, your own experience of, no, this is what I needed. You want to chat about it a little bit?
Yeah, as I mentioned, child loss is definitely can become that elephant in the room. And I've experienced going back to work 2 times, and just to understand that people just don't know how to handle it. And I think so much of what's happened is that society has changed, that we just don't know how to support each other in this, is that we've become such a society that death is no longer an acceptance of the part of life, and just to really sit back and point out and help others realize that death is part of that circle of life. And when we can understand that the expectation of a child outliving a parent is not a guarantee in life. I mean, if we even go back 100 years ago, where we had, the agricultural community, the farming communities, where they had multiple children. And those children, part of that intention was to help to have the family survive as a unit. And in 100 years ago, 50% of children would pass away by the age of 10. Accidents, early childhood diseases. And then, just as our technology and society has changed, is now we have this expectation that they outlive us. And, and that includes anything from the miscarriages to the very small preemies, to a 9-month healthy daughter in an accident, to a child that takes their life. We don't expect that. So I think being able to sit back and realize that, and then helping others to process this. And I found that what I wound up doing too was teaching others what helped me, and being able to speak about my children, and to be able to have that conversation and ask questions. And I think through, as I've taught others to help me, is that's where I've been able to help others in processing that and having that conversation. It's important to know. So I see it, in that workplace. You talked about, these wellness tracks that, it is about the employee, fellow employers, and our fellow employees and the employer. It's a triad of everybody working together, because it can impact. So if I were to go into work and I am in such a state that I can't function, I'm not doing my job, it brings on resentment from the other employees. But if it's set up as such that, hey, you know what, for a temporary period of time, that they can help to put in a little bit of extra effort. What I have found is that when you have support from other employees and your employer, that even though you're struggling, you're more than likely to be successful in being able to return back to work and to function, because people actually care. And that communication is really important, and to not ignore it. And so in helping others through that, and for the employees, it's really important for them to be able to process their grief as well, and to be intentional with their actions. We used to have a tribe of people that's, excuse me, that supported us. And now we have families scattered across the country.
Yeah.
And, we try to go back to work, and because there's the financial need. And by having somebody to be able to support you and walk you through the differences, and to have those tools. So really to give them a program to be able to help them through what they're going through. So it's really quite different. And, in the same tools that the better we can learn how to grieve, is that it helps us down the road, and we can help others, speaking their name, offering help, helping with, work, and understanding what they're going through, having some grace. And one of the things I think I had mentioned before is that even as a grieving person, if somebody says something to me that is inappropriate, I usually have to step back and give them some extra grace, because they're trying. They're trying. They don't mean to be rude. They're just asking questions. They're making that effort. I think in some ways, even though a comment may be a little bit more tenacious and harsh, it's actually coming from their heart. So, to understand that others who are trying to help may not say the right things, but they're trying to help.
Oh, may I jump in, Denise?
You bet.
Peggy, you just found a place in my heart. I think that's going to be reserved for you, because it's so powerful what you've said. And what came to my mind were the words of, I think, Martin Luther King: when we become silent, we give up our power. And for people who, as human beings, we have a tendency, we avoid when we don't feel confident, when we don't know what to say, we become silent. And what we do, then we can't communicate care. And care is an action word. So I think it's not only are the grieving people needing abilities to communicate that, but those who work with somebody grieving, knowing how to have those conversations, and even the vulnerability of, my gosh, I don't know what to say. I'm afraid it's going to be the wrong thing. Yeah. But I'm holding you in my heart, and I don't want to be silent. So it just, something like that penetrates. And so thank you. I think it just is, we, not only the person grieving, but those who work with that person need a skill. And how do we put caring in action?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lori, and thank you. And I do actually have a PDF where I 21 things to say, not to say, and to do for someone who's grieving. That's a question that I get asked all of the time. How can I help them? I'm afraid to say the wrong thing, so I don't say it. So I offer that option and the things not to say as well. It's a really great tool and resource. So it's 21 things to say and not to say.
Yeah, I would love to have that.
Peggy, you might want to put it in the connection or the link in there. And, I think.
Yeah, let me grab that connection.
Okay. And, I was on a LinkedIn webinar not long ago for HR about grief and how to deal with it. And so many people saying, yeah, that's one of the issues that they're dealing with, that people are coming back in. And it's not just the loss of life. It's the grieving of no longer being what was, the grieving of having to go back to the office, or it's the changes in circumstances, but understanding the process helps you transition to another place. And that's going to now lead me into Lisa Meg, because Lisa, you're dealing with people who, okay, I'm going to make an assumption on my part. When somebody is coming to you, let's say they're a C-suite executive and they're like, I've accomplished so much, but yet I still have no purpose in life. Isn't there a form of grief that's going on with that transition? And how do you work with them through it to find their life purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this conversation, because It's about transparency across the board when we're in a place of grief, whether it is due to the loss of someone else or whether it's due to the loss of our own identity, like I faced.
Mhm.
My identity had become my achievements. And so it took a while to face into that. And I saw some things I didn't really like, to be very honest. And that takes time. And so to have a process, to have systems and tools where we can help people de-identify themselves with what no longer serves, then we can actually rebuild from a deep place of heart-centeredness and alignment. And that is such a beautiful process. And it's bespoke for every client, because what you may be facing, Denise, is different from what I am facing, or anyone else on the panel or on the meeting here. And that's the key. And so people always say, what's the process? Well, the process is, I use the science-based tools and technologies across the board, because it's not just enough to know how, we have to be able to measure our success. So I'm very, very passionate about coherent states of mind and heart, and being able to scientifically back it up. And that comes from my science-based training with J&J, I think. It was just ingrained in my brain from a very early age as an adult that if I don't understand root cause and what the metrics are, then I don't have real answers. Just because something works doesn't mean that everyone else is going to believe that it works. So that's another aspect of this, but I'll pause there.
No, that's really good. I appreciate all of that. And that, you guys see how I'm doing this nice little weave going through here? This is fun. Jane, you're going to be the next person I call on anyway. So what's up?
Yeah, well, you rang my bell with the purpose thing with
Yep.
executives. And I forgot to mention, I'm a purpose coach, law of attraction coach, and spiritual life coach. So with some executive coaching going along with that because of my corporate background. But when people aren't in alignment with their purpose, something's off. They feel off track, lost, stuck, bored, it's just not working. And it can cause grief. You asked that question specifically. And I think that probably, I'm not going to put a specific percentage on it, but at least half of the world is not in alignment with their purpose, which is why there's a lot of discontent and unhappiness. And what it boils down to is lack of fulfillment in the world. We think we want happiness, we want fulfillment, which will bring happiness. And I believe the only way to that deeper and more consistent joy and fulfillment is by being in alignment with your innate purpose. And it's hard, people go to workshops and they meditate and, try to create their purpose, but they don't trust it because it came from themselves and they feel like they made it up. And, that's why I'm so fulfilled and studied this stuff for years so I could help people with that, individuals and company members. It's so important to be in alignment with purpose.
Jane, you and I have had this conversation before, but I was in a very successful career for 30 some odd years. Mm-hmm. I'd done the DISC assessments. I'd done the Myers-Briggs. I'd done all these I'd taken every freaking test that there is out there, I think, in the course of my career. And I hated my job. And I hated what I was doing. I was accomplished. I had a great resume. I still have a great resume, but I don't tend to pull it out because it's all about my ego, not me. And I didn't know that there were tools out there or people like Lisa and Jane who could help me figure out my path. I had to find it by literally hitting rock bottom and saying, enough, I'm done. I will figure it. I got to just close that door and put it. I don't recommend anyone do this, by the way. I literally quit everything without a backup plan. Do not do that. Have people you can work with to find that backup plan. But I did it without a backup plan because I didn't know what my life purpose was. Yeah, go ahead. No, I mean, I believe in numerology. I love numerology. I have friends who are into astrology. I've had all the reports done for me and all the charts of here's what your life purpose is. It didn't tell me what I wanted to do.
Right. Well, and even with hand analysis, the life purpose is not a job description. That would be cuckoo. It is the comprehensive description of the concept behind your ideal work. But everybody has options. Nobody's put into one little box into something that's going to align with their purpose. We've had similar backgrounds. I was MBA corporate, 3 different careers, would always hit a place where it just wasn't working. I wasn't happy. I did ask for help. It didn't help me. Did all these assessments within my corporate work, which did help with relationships and things like that. Took Myers-Briggs 3 different times, got 3 different results. Maybe I'm schizo, I don't know. But anyway, I also had one of those wake-up calls where both of my parents passed away within 3 months of each other. And it was just a real, I call them cosmic two-befores, proverbial wake-up call, like, hey, life is short. I need to quit farting around and figure this out. And that's when I started searching and found scientific hand analysis, which I was initially very skeptical about.
Yeah.
But finding purpose, however you find it, is very important.
It is. And Eric, you have your hand up.
I do. First, I just thought Jane was cool with the hands behind her, so I feel like I needed a hand up on my screen as well. So that's part of it. Second, I don't know. I'm picturing Lisa with like the strongest right arm ever. Her phone has stayed so stable. if anyone's watching her, I'm just impressed. I needed to put that out there.
Probably in a tree branch.
Right. But my point is, and I don't want to derail this conversation, but it's sort of wrapped up in all of this. It's one thing for us to, as people are coming to us for guidance and direction, for us to not be familiar enough with ourselves to know how to respond to that and support people in the way that they need to be supported. So if Peggy shows up, for example, and she brings that grief with her, and I don't know what to do about that, that's one thing. I think we're doing our teams an even greater disservice. Number one, by not investing in ourselves in these ways that we've already been talking about. But 2, we are actively putting out into the world that we are welcoming everyone's whole person back to the workplace. You're seeing so much of this on LinkedIn and in other places, right? We want to embrace your entire person and all the trauma that you're bringing back with you. And there's a place for you here. And we're practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is becoming sort of a common message and mantra. Yet when people show up back to the workplace, bringing this grief and bringing this trauma and bringing this emotion, our old habits kicked in because we haven't done the important work in the meantime of learning about ourselves and learning about how to receive them. So Peggy comes back to the workplace wanting to trust that she can share, her news and her pain. Someone else comes back to the workplace wanting to share the conflict and internal and external conflict they've experienced around race relations in the meantime. And we're telling them to do that. Yet we are not equipped in the ways that we have heard from Lori and Lisa and Jane and others to know how to deal with that from other people, because we're not first and foremost looking inward to deal with it ourselves. I won't go into HR hot seat and all of that just yet, but it's already been brought up that being intentional about surrounding yourself by people who can help you figure those things out, whether it's the assessments, the tools, the expertise, or just the care, I think is a really strong first step to getting to a place where you're comfortable with yourself so that you can be comfortable embracing the wholeness that people are bringing back to work with them.
Well, let's talk about HR hot seat because now is probably a really good time. I want to give you my impressions of it. So I found Eric by accident during the shutdown in, I think, April of 2020. And I decided in April, since everything was quiet, that I was going to find a way to either love Twitter or kill it forever. And so I jumped in and, I had bad experiences on Twitter, and I started playing with it, and I started connecting with groups of people that I wanted to connect with, the human resource community, absolutely one of them. And in the course of that, I kept seeing these posts from people that were sharing this Harmony Insights is doing HR hot seat, these Friday lunches. It was only like a half an hour long. And I thought, oh, what the heck, I'm going to go to it. So I went to one. First of all, I was blown away because there were like 100 people on the call for this 30-minute conversation, all from the HR field. And Eric runs them really, really well. And he had a dynamite speaker. In fact, the speaker that day was Steve Brown. and Steve is amazing in talking to him. And so I just kind of followed it for a while, and he and I connected, and I can't, I'm definitely a member of his admiration society, because I just love what he's doing. But here's the thing that the people have told me, because I've connected with a lot of people from HR Hot Seat. They do feel all alone, but they don't feel alone when they go to HR Hot Seat. And he does this for free, guys. And I've told so many people about it who want to, and a number of them have gone over and connected with you. I know, Eric, but you're delivering the tools and the resources. And I've talked now way more. And by the way, who won the bundt cake Tuesday night? Because it wasn't me.
Still working on it.
That's okay. I don't need a bundt cake. But yeah, I know he runs these great meetings, and he has all these prizes. Yeah, your choice. But Eric, if you would talk about the discussion groups, the breakout rooms, the coming together as community, the sharing of the problems, and being able to mastermind on those problems. Would you talk about how all of that works and what types of things that we're talking about?
I'm happy to, and thank you for that setup. And I just do want to underscore that it is entirely free. So, and we are despite this commercial, we are a non-commercial group. And so I'd love to focus on really the benefit that we're offering to the people who are attending, in hopes that people in this group will find some benefit as well. As I mentioned earlier, I'm on the introverted side of things, and it's really important to me when I network that I'm connecting meaningfully with other people. And I'm also fairly introspective, and I think a lot about why we do the work that we do and why we are attracted to the relationships that we are. And I had at one point, I had started hearing all of this, Jim Rohn and others talking about you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I think that number is probably a lot larger than 5, but if we go with 5, I started to look around at the people that were closest in proximity to me, and I realized that I wasn't being intentional about who those people were. And so this mastermind style really caught my attention, where you can be more intentional and say, you know what, let's see, Kathy or Robert, or Michelle or Carol, they bring some perspective to life and to work that would be so beneficial to me. They have been where I am. They are where I want to go myself. Rather than waking up and just sort of haphazardly spending the time with the people who I'm surrounded by accidentally, if I could be intentional about who those people are, how much more fulfilling could life be? What could I learn that I wouldn't learn otherwise? And so, in a nutshell, I wanted to bring that conversation to the HR space. And what started as a traditional mastermind group of 8 to 10 people has now been scaled up to a mastermind community, where we may get, just on Tuesday, we had 145 people at our event. We have the benefit of everyone coming together to share best practices and to share job opportunities and to inspire one another and to coach each other through job searches. But then we maintain that intimate conversation by breaking out, using Zoom functionality, into smaller, more intimate groups of 8 to 10 people, and saying to our members, Denise, what is your greatest current challenge in your work or your job search related to HR? Bring that to an HR Hot Seat Mastermind event to get actionable advice from your peers. Mm-hmm. Everybody who shows up brings equally valuable expertise, perspective, and experience. We don't have a single subject matter expert. I don't position myself as one. We don't have people necessarily showing up to say, I've figured this all out. Regardless of your title, your position in your organization, how long you've been in your career, everybody is bringing equally valuable perspective. And it's one thing to sort of talk it through and blow off steam and get it off your chest and feel good about that. What we make sure happens is that people leave knowing how they can take that peer-oriented advice, keep it actionable, and maintain the meaningful connections that they've made there until the next event, and then going forward in whatever way is going to be beneficial to them as an individual.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
So I'm going to invite anyone in the audience, if you have a question for one of our speakers, would you please raise your hand by hitting the reactions button on the bottom menu of this? There's reactions and you can raise your hand. And while you're thinking of questions that you might have, I want to share with you one other resource that is here that we haven't talked anything about. And that is some of the resources available through You Define Wellness. And most of them are free too. So if you'll indulge me for a minute or two on this informational video. So I gotta stop this before it goes and plays the next video automatically. We don't want to have that happen. Anyways,
I'm
so
so glad you showed that, Denise, because You Define Wellness has so many resources, it's almost overwhelming. So, set aside 10 minutes to just play on the website and really look and see what's there for HR professionals.
It's huge. This wellness center, we launched it last summer during the middle of 2020, this new platform. And when people go over there, the comments that I hear from them are, oh my gosh, this is amazing. There's tons and tons and tons of free resources. We have employers, very, very large employers who looking for content for their wellness newsletters that they have to put out every single month for their employees. They go and they take it from our website, either a video or something from our Healthy Living Articles blog where our providers contribute articles to it. Or some other, there's freebies on there, a lot of downloads. There's all kinds of different things that are on the website that are complements of the providers who are in our network. And we have hundreds of providers literally now worldwide. We are mostly nationwide. I have one in Germany, so I can say worldwide. And we have somebody who's on this call who's from Sweden, as a matter of fact. So, we are branching out and there is just a ton of information. And almost every provider in our network would be happy to do a workplace wellness education class of some sort. And we have a bunch. I'm gonna grab something real quick. I actually do. I don't have this available to you right now, but we have this flyer, if I can hide it, that has tons and tons and tons of topics out here. And we're getting it updated for our website right now. So that's not available. But if you're looking for wellness education, contact us. Go to our website, youdefinewellness.com, and hit the contact us tab. That would be fantastic. Any other questions for our panelists? Okay.
I
Final
have one for
words?
Lisa.
Lisa.
Can I ask one of Lisa?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we can keep this brief if you're ready to transition into something. But Lisa, my perception is that you're working with business leaders, executives, in part. Is that true?
That is part of it. Excuse me. That is part of it. So the executive coaching is one aspect of the business. And the other aspect is the neuroscience of change for teams and organizations. And that includes very, very cool science-based models to help people understand how we shift our mindset. And literally, you hit on it earlier when you talked about habituated states. So it's a huge part about what we do to unwire and rewire the brain of an organization and the heart of an organization.
So I guess my question, just to tie it back to how we started with people being more or less self-aware, more or less able and equipped and empowered to make the changes in their own lives, do you find that as you get higher up the food chain, so to speak, that there's any shift in that willingness, that executives, for example, are less willing to be introspective or less willing to work on themselves and are more focused on working on their organizations and their entrepreneurial pursuits? Or do you find that they are more readily available to do those things because of certain experiences that they've had?
That's a great question. And I think it depends. The people that I'm attracted to and that are attracted to this work are the ones who are pretty aware.
Mhm.
They're seeking something else. They know something's not quite right. And so I think about it like a continuum. There are certainly the ones that have their head down and are doing things the same way they were doing in 1980, 1990, 2000, and they have no interest in changing. And that's not who we can help, to be honest, and to be very direct. We have to find the leaders that have that glimmer of awakening, that have a sparkle in their eye, that they know there's more. Those are the ones we can serve. And I don't want to speak for everybody on the panel, but I think that's where our energies need to go. Because if we can hit those enlightened leaders with tools that work, systems that work, processes that work in data-driven ways, they can show evidence of the way to shift a culture. And they can change companies within a year. It doesn't take multiple years. And so I always say that it has everything to do with finding the one or two right leaders that are ready for the work within an organization, and then watch what happens.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
love that too.
And it's, the world is changing, you guys, if you've noticed, we're being called, like, the world needs our help. And a lot of people do fear self-awareness because they're afraid they won't like what they find inside. And the opposite is what is true. It's so empowering. And more leaders are going to go down that path, because the ones who aren't, their companies are going to be failing, because authenticity is becoming just critical in the workplace. And you can't be, as I've mentioned before, you can't be authentic if you're not self-aware. So there's a lot of tools, on this call to help with self-awareness and becoming better leaders and role models.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's do some quick final thoughts. I did want to see if we could take a really quick bio break before we go into the next section. So let's see if we can keep it short. Peggy, final thoughts.
Well, thank you. So, I just feel that in this HR arena, that this is such an opportunity, an important conversation. And, for the other professionals as well, is because it's more of a unique niche, is that, that this is something that we can work together as well on, and helping them to understand that. And then I come from that personal experience. And really being able to reach out, and Lori had mentioned care, and that it's an action word, and showing that those who are grieving, that you care, can make such a difference and to make change. And that even comes from how much time they have off from work. Is that, are critical now, and most states don't have laws regarding how much time anybody takes. Like, here, go, your son, your daughter has passed away, go take care of those arrangements and come back to work in 3 days. And so this is it's such an important place to be able to offer that support, so that they feel welcome, and it impacts the entire workforce. So remember that, and because so many people do just come in and put a fake face on, and then they go home, and it's a terrible vicious cycle. So helping them to feel cared for, loved for in the work environment is huge as they go through that grief. And I can help with that, because when they can move through that, even on their own personal level, it helps them to move into work as well.
Okay. Lori, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think when we improve our communication, we improve our outcomes. And that when race issues, relational issues all of these areas of concerns really can be addressed one safe conversation at a time. Sometimes transformed by a single conversation, more likely a series of safe conversations.
Awesome. Eric, final thoughts?
One of my favorite quotes is Anais Nin said, "We don't see the world, or we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." If we're not doing the hard work of introspection to learn who we are and how we need to connect with other people and what our purpose is in helping them, helping others do whatever it is that they are looking to do, I think we're missing our greatest opportunity to do our best work and to be of most value to the world.
Yeah. Lisa, final thoughts?
I love that, Eric. It's all about being the change that we want to see in the world from my perspective. And I feel so much passion across the panelists and with you, Denise, and the people that are tuning in. We're all ready for change. And we know that there's a better way forward. There's a better way to live. There's a better way to lead. And there's a better way to serve. And we can do this. And we can use science-founded principles, tools, technologies to drive this change. But we have to, as Eric said, be willing to look under the cover. We have to be willing to go deep and to do the work ourselves and to let go of some of the things that aren't serving anymore. Some of the ways that we think, some of the ways that we act, some of the ways that we feel our states of being. And then we can actually transform not only our own lives, but our companies, our cultures, and entire organizations and our communities. So thank you again for having us, Denise.
Oh, my pleasure. Jane, you want to wrap up the final thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple. You knew I would.
Yeah.
And just to bring it back to the beginning when we were talking about self-care, human resource staff usually and leaders get involved in human resource because they want to help. They want to help people, which makes that epidemic about not taking care of themselves. They want to help others. So I just urge you to plan self-care, plan fun like you would a meeting. And get it into your schedule because it's the only way that it'll happen. Make it intentional. And we talked also about purpose. There actually are people who don't want to know what their purpose is because they realize they're going to have to make change. I mean, getting on purpose it's kind of like stepping off a cliff. Could be a little cliff, but stepping off a cliff is scary. But you just have to trust that the parachute will open, and it will. You may pee your pants on the way down, but the parachute is going to open. So, any change scares people. But it's so worth it to know what your purpose is and get more in alignment with that.
It is. And with that, I have to say thank you to all of my panelists for being with me today, saying yes to the opportunity to come and share your wonderful expertise. We absolutely appreciate it. And the resources that you have available. And again, folks, go to the site on our website, udefinewellness.com, for this event, the HR agenda, and click that circle that has their bios on it and connect with them, because I think it's just some wonderful resources for you.